Hey patrons, last video with a big flood. Hope you enjoyed it. So I'm responding here to EA Co-Wedding. This guy's like, I don't know what he calls himself, a Satanist maybe, or like an occult guy, or black magician, I don't know. One of those kind of things. And the video I really wanted to reply to from this guy, and I have for a long time, is called How to Milk Gold from Lucifer's Tit. Maybe you can understand why I'm so desperate to reply to that, but the problem is there's not really any argument there. It's mostly just woo-woo gibberish with not much of a point that I can discern. I usually like to respond to stuff with like some kind of a core argument to it, or at least composed of smaller arguments, right? Usually trying to prove some point. And so how could I resist the title, Undeniable Proof of Demonic Poltergeist with Azazel, Real Pyromancy? I mean, I think that's about the best a title can get without being How to Milk Gold from Lucifer's Tit. Enough rambling, let's go.
Hey guys, it's EA Co-Wedding.
It sure is. Hey, Left Hand Path, I love that album.
I want to tell you about some of the crazy things that happened while I evoked Azazel here into this temple. Some of the omens that were manifested when he came and he arrived and made his presence known.
All right, but let's skip to the point. I don't got all day.
I strike the bowl. Now I've developed a solid rule that from that moment that I strike the bowl until I say the words, "So it is done," everything that occurs, everything that comes into my observation is part of the ritual. It doesn't matter if it happens inside this temple or outside. It doesn't matter if it's the sound of an animal or some other natural noise, or if it's an artificial man-made noise like the passing of a car or sirens. If it's an orb that levitates in the air, if the smoke assembles itself from the incense into the face of a demon, if my eyes catch a shadow on the wall, and that shadow seems to be a face, and it seems to be speaking to me, even if things are injected into my mind, if I find that spontaneously a thought appears, all of these are communications from the forces that I'm calling.
That was a bit long of a clip, and I'm sorry to everyone watching, but I wanted you to watch it all in one dose to really get the idea of what's going on here. It doesn't matter what happens, if a dog barks, if a car goes by, if he sees a spooky shadow, if he has a weird thought while he's performing his satanic ritual. What are the odds of that? This is the starting point of the person who's presenting this proof to us. Everything is evidence of communication with this demon. I'd hate to be accused of poisoning the well, but fortunately I don't think I will, because you kind of poisoned it yourself, EA.
Now when I called Azazel into this temple, just about every single time he came, he left his mark. He signed his autograph on events.
Considering your standard for what constitutes a signature, I'd say that was pretty much inevitable, yeah.
These are so profound in the moment, and even afterwards, to reflect on, because it takes the conversation, the communication, the connection that I'm having with Azazel internally, and it connects it with the outside world. It is a verification, a validation that indeed something is occurring.
Is it, though? I can understand if you set up in advance a limited number of things that can happen that mean Azazel is there, that are really, really unlikely to happen on their own. And then if those happen, yeah, I could see taking those as confirmation, but you said an animal making noise outside, or a car going by, or a shadow that kind of looks like a face is enough for you. I'm sorry, but that stuff is so absolutely mundane. How is that a verification of anything? If literally anything that can possibly happen during one of your rituals you take as a verification that your thing is true, then you're basically saying that your thing is true no matter what, and it's pretty much unfalsifiable and therefore unverifiable. Job done, I guess. Now, if I were a sane person, I'd say response over at this point, but let's see what you actually got. But before I do, I should note the full version of this is behind a paywall, specifically an $800 paywall, which, to be fair, also includes a couple of books.
This includes the Pathworking video course, the Compendium of Azazel in leather, a free softcover copy of the Book of Azazel, and the Flag of Azazel.
Apparently this is a $3,200 discount off regular price. What is it with woo-woo people and their insane prices anyway? You think anyone's ever bought this thing? So there's no way for me to see the full details of the proof in this ritual without paying a ludicrous amount of money, which obviously isn't about to happen. But the video we're looking at right now is called Undeniable Proof, so it should have the best of the best stuff. So let's see it.
And I welcomed Azazel as my new teacher. And as I asked for him to rise, to come, to make himself known, the sky outside blackened, and thunder struck and rolled in perfect timing with his answer that indeed he is there, he is here, that he is with me. Beneficium maleficus illicet.
Ooh, that does sound thundery. Must have recorded on a bad day. Or put in a sound effect. To me, it kind of sounds like a fade-in at the start there. But I don't want to accuse you of faking it. That's kind of a cheap rebuttal. I did spend a little while going through thunder sound effects on YouTube and a bunch of sound effects sites, because it would have been hilarious to actually catch you faking by finding the exact sound effect, but I didn't find it. So I have zero hard evidence that you're faking. I'll leave it at saying it sounds a little bit dubious to me, but that could just be the way the mic's picking it up. And I'll go with the charitable assumption that it was just a bit thundery outside that day. Although if it really is thunder, you probably should get your house insulated better, maybe around the window area, because that seems like some ridiculous sound penetration. Especially if you're using a directional mic, which I think you must be, because I don't see any lapel mics, or lapels. I'd love a quick pan around that room to see if there's an open window behind your camera.
Azazel, the skies have blackened for you. The skies blackened for you. The skies blackened to herald your coming.
Very dramatic. Not necessarily convincing, that'd need better abs, but you're almost there.
Now, most people could consider this to be a simple storm. Maybe it was expected and I just didn't know about it.
Maybe. In which case I wish you'd tell me when and where you did this so I could at least check the weather forecast for that day. But you don't provide that information, so how am I supposed to take this as undeniable proof when I don't even know how the weather was?
Maybe the thunder was going to strike at that exact moment. I don't know.
It is normal or paranormal? I ask myself this question every time I go to the office.
What's the alternative? That those clouds spontaneously gathered and it started thundering after the few seconds that it took you to say your spell? I feel like someone else might have noticed that.
What I do know is, in the moment of the ritual, in the deep, deep crossroads state, everything that occurs in that ritual is a message that I have to interpret, or at the very least, pay attention to.
So you said, but that just means you're taking it as proof because you want to. But normally when you present something as undeniable proof, you don't mean you feel like it's proof to you. You mean it should work as proof for people who aren't you. When other people see this proof, it should be absurd for them to deny that it actually proves what you're trying to prove. But the whole way through this video, you throw out disclaimers like, oh yeah, it could just be a thing that happened. Most people will probably think that, but like, I really felt it though.
Several times throughout the scrying session, the left candle would flicker for no apparent reason. Communicate to me, Azazel.
Oh, I've seen that before. Looks like you might have to trim your wick. Here's a video showing that problem close up. And if we look at your close-up, especially at the closer candle on the right that we can see a little better, we can see that the wick is super long, frayed, and really shitty. So just trim that up a bit, should fix your problem. Of course, that might be bad for business.
Now, these are candles that I've used constantly. I do have suppliers that I return to over and over and over again for the same candles, the same incense, and I've never seen a candle flicker in just this way. The flame just popping in exact timing with the question being answered or asked.
So it's not that you've never seen a candle pop, it's that you've never seen a candle pop shortly after you asked some spirit a question, which means there was a 100% failure rate until now, but this one time it popped. So the $800 instead of $4,000 question is, how many questions have you asked previously where the candle didn't pop? Does that math work out to something you think would constitute undeniable proof for other people?
Again, this is simple to dismiss, to excuse away as coincidence.
No, there's no need to do that. If this was the first time you asked a question and this happened, then it'd be a coincidence. But when you do these stupid rituals for a living and it's never happened to you before, despite candle pops being a pretty normal event with an untrimmed wick, it's not a coincidence. Coincidence implies some level of improbability. If the candle popped right after you asked a question every time you asked a question of a demon, then I might have to start thinking about coincidence. Not if it happens like 1 time out of 100 or whatever number it is. No, at this point it's just a totally mundane thing that happened once.
But in my opinion, if you're doing that, you're excusing away the voice of magic. You're ignoring the voice of the spirit that you've called.
Yeah, because you're currently trying to prove to me that that thing exists at all. This is your undeniable proof video for the existence of that spirit. I'm not here to try to hear some voice of magic. I'm not here to pay attention to the voice of the spirit you're trying to convince me exists. I'm here to evaluate the quality of your proof, so I can decide if there even is anything to ignore.
There were a couple times throughout the rituals that I performed with Azazel that my whole body lost strength. And I fell over at one point from a complete standing position as I am now standing. I fell hard on the floor. And it hurt. It hurt.
It's spooky.
Motherfucker, please, you think I didn't see that knee? Let's look at that again, slower. So you fall, down onto your knee, and then your other knee, and then you guide yourself gently to the floor with your arm in this smooth rolling motion. I've seen more convincing falls in school plays. Come on now, if you want to convince me you hurt yourself, give me a proper faceplant. You're not a 90-year-old lady, you don't break at the touch of a feather.
I've fallen, and I can't get up.
But I was so out. I was so deep. That even though I could feel the pain, I could feel the jolt, I could feel like perhaps my shoulder had become dislocated.
Oh, give me a break. By the way, dude, this whole theatrics you got going on, this is so not how you summon a demon. This cringy shit is gonna make him stay far away. You ever try just, talking? Being like, hey, Azazel, if you're out there, you wanna hang out? If they're into it, they're not just gonna make some candle flicker, at least not the cool ones like Azazel. No, he'll poof into the room and be like, hey man, you wanna get a keg, find some girls, liven this place up a bit?
I didn't care, I didn't react. I just laid there and let Azazel take me wherever he needed to take me and show me what he needed to show me.
Even if I believed your fall, I'm not sure what it's supposed to prove anyway, other than that you're prone to fainting when you do weird breathing exercises.
Most shocking, though, was my evocation of Azazel. I lit the incense coals and sprinkled the same incense that I always use, copal resin incense, and again, from the same supplier that I bought this from for years. And as the coals were hot enough, I placed the incense resin on the coals. It smoked and released the beautiful white smoke that I've become extremely accustomed to and almost triggered by in ritual. As I called Azazel and his presence became undeniably real here in this temple, the incense did something I've never seen it do before. It caught fire.
Okay, same problem as before then, with the candles. There's something you've done a lot of times before and a certain thing never happened, and then one time it happens and you decide that means something. For some reason you're not taking into account that there was a massive failure rate before now, or that this likely means it's just chance. Instead you're reading this time as meaningful and all the other times where this didn't happen as meaning nothing. You chucked a bunch of fuel onto some coals and it happened to be hot enough to set it on fire a bunch of times, whereas the other times it wasn't. This time it kept on happening to the point you even seemed to get kind of annoyed about it.
Must we battle back and forth with such trivial things? Oh, okay, yes. Yes, we must.
I'd like to point out something important that people might not have noticed, which is that these are all different rituals, or they seem to be. It's not just the difference in clothes, makeup, hair, and that kind of stuff, although that is part of it. It's also the difference in the setup of the room. That might seem insignificant, but that shows there wasn't even just some ritual where all kinds of surprising things kept happening. There were several rituals, hours worth of rituals, where one or two small events were picked out of each one. And I think it'd be pretty tough to mess around all day with fire, incense, candles, and whatever else, and not have at least something happen that you could pick out as odd if you were looking for it. Speaking of which, the last weird thing is his mic failed.
Azazel.
Been there, buddy. I doubt it was a demon, but I've been there.
Now, I'm sure all of these things can be explained. I'm sure that you could find perfectly logical reasons that all of these things could happen. I've come to know better. I've learned to recognize the voice of magic and the voice of these beings. First, the internal voice, as they speak to me and I receive and channel their communications, but also to observe the omens that occur in the world outside of me. The would-be circumstances or coincidences that instead to me seem very much like signs, like omens.
Sure, you can come up with a perfectly logical explanation, but it seems like an omen to me, so fuck it. That's the overall argument here, right? Yeah, undeniable proof. I deny it. Do better. And I'm gonna call it there. So like I said, this is the last video in the 11 video catch-up flood, and I've had a ton of fun making these videos. I think I'm gonna try to do more stuff kind of like this for the public too. It's been a really refreshing change of pace. I've really enjoyed myself. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and see you next month.